Welcome and good morning once again. It's Albert Flynn DeSilver, and this is Cultivating Creativity, Wisdom, and Compassion in Difficult Times. And I'm so glad you are joining us this morning. Hello, Peggy. And Lynn is here joining us. Larry is coming. All right. Slipping in under the bell. Welcome, welcome, and good morning. I'm going to get going here. And I want to begin with the special announcement of the last couple of weeks, which I've already told most of you about, which is the great, the wonderful, the amazing Cheryl Strayed is coming to work with me and with all of you who want to join us on September 26th. This is a full day writing workshop. And I am so excited. I've had the great pleasure of working with her a couple of times, once here in Northern California and once in Maui, Hawaii, which was phenomenal. And people are still trickling in. Oh, welcome, Karina. Yay, Karina's here. That's fun. And so I just wanted to let you all know that I have posted the announcement and registration is open. So I encourage you, if you're interested in experiencing some teachings from a truly great writer and a truly wise soul. You know, the interesting thing about Cheryl is that she's not like a traditional spiritual guru-y type person. You know, she's a writer, and she's one of these people who seems to have been born wise. And her writing is so lucid and articulate and compassionate. And so it's, in addition to the book Wild, which was her big runaway bestseller, there's a compilation of her Dear Sugar column called Tiny Beautiful Things, which is truly amazing. And people write in, on all different kinds of subjects. They might have just lost a loved one. They're struggling with their writing. They're having a spiritual crisis. And she would respond. And for a long time, she was anonymous as Sugar. And she wrote this column on the, oh God, what's that site called? It's this really terrific literary culture site out of the Bay Area called The Rumpus. I knew it would come to me, The Rumpus, which if you haven't checked out is great. There's a lot of amazing essays and writings and so forth. Anyways, she got her start as Sugar. That was her pseudonym name. Nobody knew who it was. It was just like you would write into Sugar and you would tell Sugar your deepest, darkest secrets. And then after Wild came out, she was outed. And it was Cheryl. And so they made this book called Tiny Beautiful Things, which is a compilation of some of her responses to people's questions and issues and challenges. And it's really just fantastic. She's also written a novel called Torch, which she wrote before Wild, which didn't get much attention at the time. And of course, now has gotten a lot of attention. So she's just amazing, and it's going to be a phenomenal day. You'll get a little bit of me in the morning, and then you'll get to write with her in the afternoon. And it is a writing workshop. I just want to be clear about that. And it's also a benefit. So it's a benefit for the Black Lives Matter movement. And you'll notice that the price is higher than my normal day longs. So it's $249. And the reason for that is, well, twofold. One, it's a benefit. And two, Cheryl is a star, and she does not come cheap. So, my goal is to try and give away. I would love to give away $10,000 to the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's one of my little visions. And anyways, so you can register for that. Oh, Audrey, thank you so much. I had put it there in the very top at the beginning. That's really all I wanted to announce, because what else is there? It's going to be a great day. So let's gather ourselves and prepare for a sitting. And I always like to begin by finding a way to sit comfortably at ease and yet a little bit upright. with a little sense of sort of dignity and self-compassion, self-awareness, and so that we have some good flow of energy through the body. And I also like to ground myself by beginning with a single deep breath inward through the nose and exhaling out through the mouth. And you can let your eyes close gently. And with these first few exhales, just finding your center, finding your sense of balance in groundedness. Letting your shoulders drop, your hands rest easily, allowing your feet to be flat on the floor, or legs resting easily on the cushion. Just settling into the breathing body. Realizing in this moment that we absolutely have nothing to do. We can just let go and allow ourselves to be guided into spaciousness. Allow ourselves to be guided into awareness. There's nothing that we have to figure out or get right. There's nothing to manage or control or change. We're simply coming together in creative spiritual community. Simply to be open and receptive, curious and awake. Allowing whatever's here to flow through with an open heart of compassion and loving kindness. Now, after a minute or two, you might notice your mind wandering off into dreams or anticipation, questions or memory. Maybe there's a song in your head. Just bring your awareness back to the breathing body, back to this moment. Simply noticing breath in and breath out. Returning to that patient, kind heart of loving kindness and compassion. Simply breath in and breath out. And again, if you've noticed your mind wandering off, drifting into fantasy, dream, remembering, just right now with the sound of my voice, bring your awareness back to the breathing body. Back to this moment, just to experience a few conscious breaths here in the center of your experience. We're practicing being in the reality of the present moment, no matter what arises, with as much self-compassion and loving kindness as we can muster in any moment. And in a minute or two, you'll hear the sound of the bell. And allow that not to be the end of the meditation, but perhaps the beginning. The bell is always a call to presence. It's a call to awakening. So that is the magic bell. And you can take a moment just to bring yourself back to eyes open and a different mode of attention and receptivity. Well, again, good morning. And if you're joining us late, welcome, welcome. And this morning, I thought it might be interesting to talk about ego. And I don't know why I was reading about ego. And I have my main character in my latest book project has interactions with Carl Jung. And so I was thinking about ego. And, you know, it's funny, and also just the mere fact that I'm in this sort of position as a thought leader, which is a term I hate, you know, or, you know, I have a personal branding business, or, you know, I don't even know what to call it. And so I'm sort of always in contrast, I guess is the best way to put it, in contrast with my ego. And this thing, Albert, you know, I have to sort of create this thing, Albert, all the time in order to just to simply carry the teachings and to exist as an entity in a consumerist capitalist society, in which I have a complicated relationship on one level. And yet, spiritually speaking, it's all about letting go of that, right? Letting go of that identity and seeing ourselves in a more spacious, oh yeah, there's another terrible term, influencer. Thank you, Ronnie. Hopefully it's the only thing I'm influencing you on is reminding you of your own creative genius, your own spiritual perfection, your own creative potentiality. That's it. And this notion of ego is kind of interesting. It's so established. Some of you are psychologists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists. I seem to have a fair number of practicing psychologists in my community, and so the ego is a very, it's something that you study in school quite a bit. And yet, where is this ego that we talk about? Right? Can we find it? Like, where is this ego? Show me the ego. It's such an established concept that we think of it as almost like a physical thing, right? My ego. And yet, if you really look inside, like, where is this ego? We're trying to avoid it. Is it something to avoid? Someone who's egotistical, right? We don't want to be egotistical. Really, I think what that means is that we're overly identified with the personality. We're over-identified with the positionality, the opinion, the belief, all these things that make up a personality. And when we become over-identified with them, we're constantly reacting and coming up against all the other identities, all the other egos in the world. And that can create conflict. Often does create conflict. And so what does it mean to let go of that ego, that thing, ego? This thing, Albert, to let go of that, or this thing, Lisa, this thing, Patty, this thing, Tori, to let go of that entity. And now, of course, we have to, in the relative world, it's a very useful thing to have a personality, to manage your daily activities, right? And yet, spirituality asks us to really question our attachment and our aversions, and what really causes suffering in the world. Is it the external stuff that's happening? Is that what causes suffering? Or is it our response to all that stuff happening out there? And you've heard me talk a lot about identity over these past few months. And actually, I'm working on my next book, nonfiction book, is all about questions and using questions to transcend fixed identities of self that are limiting, that are inherently limiting. And now there's certain identities of self that can be sort of advancing, or they can be liberating, right? If you identify as love, that's pretty liberating. And not just like, oh, I love my dog, and I love my wife, and I love my family, mine. But when we expand that sense of love, that capacity for love outside of our sphere, what happens? What happens? Where does the ego go when we love all things, and even the things that we normally have aversion to? Can we do that? And I don't really have any hard, fast answers here, but I think these are really interesting questions to sit with and to contemplate and to be with. And the ego, the ego is such a funny thing when you start like really thinking about the ego, because you can kind of get at war with this thing. Like, I want to, you know, it's always hindering me. It's always following me everywhere, my ego, and causing trouble. You know, and one of the things that we're practicing in meditation and mindfulness is being with what is, no matter what arises. And we don't know what's going to arise emotionally in our experience. You know, and it's always changing, right? I mean, check in for yourself. Isn't it always changing? Like, isn't it, you know, like one moment we're blissed out and feeling pretty good, and the next minute we're just feeling like this weight of the world streaming through. And then it changes. And how to find our center, our ground in all of that change, I think is another important question. And because of the layered conditioning, it takes practice. I mean, this is why we come to practice. You know, it seems as if we're born ultimately as pure beings, you know, pure kind of awake beings. And, you know, through childhood, we get all these labels get hurled on us, beginning with the name, so that we identify the name. And then, like, you're a good baby, or you're a bad baby, or you're a loud baby, or you're a fussy baby, or, you know, and these things, even when we don't yet have language, these things have an imprint. They have an impact, and they go into our conditioning. And so we come to practice to remind ourselves of who we really are, beyond ego, as, you know, lovers of the world, lovers of self, and not in that egotistical way, right? That I think I'm so cool, or I think I'm so great, but that, like, oh, I love myself. You know, that's a beautiful thing, to love yourself. When you love yourself, there's not a boundary there. You know, you're loving yourself as other. You're loving yourself as nature, as crow call, as flower bloom, as obnoxious person who just cut me off on the freeway. And it seems to be a different, it seems to be dependent upon our practiced disposition of curiosity and presence. I had this experience not too long ago. I was driving back in traffic, you know, on the 101 freeway, and it was all just like busy and intense, and everyone, you know, people are jogging for position, and I had to sort of catch myself, because I tend to get a little amped up in the car. Just triggered. Like, it was one of my things, these things that my father was just like such a spaz in the car. He just was like constantly yelling at everybody, you know, and I, like, it's just part of what I grew up watching, right? And so there's this part of me that has taken that on as part of my conditioning. So I have to, like, practice in the car, right? Practice my breathing, practice. Anyways, and so I was like coming into these cars where everyone's shifting in front of each other, and we got to this merge, and I took a deep breath, and I was like, oh, I don't need to, like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just here in the car driving. Like, there's nowhere to, like, rush to. I don't have to get ahead of this person. And I took a deep breath. I was like, oh, this is such a relief. And I looked over, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to let them go. And I turned to my right and looked at the car that was, like, I could feel them right up next to me. And I waved my hand like, la. And they were looking at me, And they were smiling and they were like, hello, you go. You know, it was just this really sweet moment of both of us letting go, right? And being like, no, you go, no, you go, no, let's all go. It was so sweet. And I think like that's waking up, right? That's beyond ego. It's like, I know this person is probably also stressed out. You know, they're coming from a big day at work. Who knows, their mother might be sick in the hospital. You know, we have no idea what's going on with other people in the world. And particularly when they're behaving badly, right? It's usually for a reason. There's usually something going on. They're not doing it just to torture us, right? Although we can take that personally. Our egos can take that personally. So we sit with this like miasma of information, emotional information, bodily sensation, conditioning, opinions and beliefs. And we sit, and in meditation, we see the stirring up of all this energy and information. And we come back to, oh, just this breath, non-self. I don't have to get caught up in that. You know, there's part of me that's bigger than all that can watch all of that, almost dispassionately. And I don't have to react. I can just breathe and observe and notice. And wow, how life opens up, how our creativity opens up. It takes a lot of energy to cling on to identity, to cling on to ego. And it sucks our creative energies. You know, it sucks our compassionate energies, our capacity for wonder and noticing beauty in the world. And so we practice and we come together in this way in creative community, in spiritual community, devoted to waking up and knowing that it begins with us. You know, it begins in our hearts. It's not about them having to figure it out. It's about us learning to accept, learning to breathe, learning to be open and to let go. So it's 9:36. I think that's a good place to pause. And I'm curious to hear from all of you. What's your take on ego? You know, what's your experience with ego? And if you're a therapist out there, it'd be interesting to hear. I'm looking at Letitia. Says she read a line yesterday from C.S. Friedman, and the beast rose within me. My dark ego lives within the darker part of me. The good ego is the one I like everyone to see, right? So that's part of like our personalities of just like, you know, we have this presentable side versus the shadow side. That's straight out of Jung. It is 10 o'clock. I want to thank you all so much for your wisdom and for your kind presence here today and every week. This is so lovely and so heartening, what we need right now in this time. And so I hope you'll join us on Friday for the writing class if you are so interested. Friday at 9, same place here. You can get all the links on the website. And so till next time, be well, be safe and healthy, and go out there and love and smile for someone today.